This is part one of a three-part series in another Three Cousins Detective Club book. This one is called The Mystery of the Silent Nightingale, written by Elspeth Campbell Murphy, illustrated by Joe Nordstrom. Chapter 1, In the Store Window. No one could spend more time looking in store windows than Sarah Jane Cooper. At least that's what her cousins Timothy Dawson and Titus McKay thought. And now they said so, loudly. "Come on, S.J.," said Timothy. "We're supposed to meet Kelly at the library when she gets off work. We don't want to be late." Titus added, "If we're late, we can't go over to the high school with Kelly to pick up her cap and gown." But Sarah Jane stood firm. No, wait. This is about Kelly." She dragged the boys over to the crowded window of Mr. Robinson's antique store. "I want to show you what I wish we could get Kelly for graduation. It's so cool." "I thought you already got Kelly's graduation present. It's supposed to be from all of us," said Timothy. "Yes," said Titus. "I thought your mom let you pick Kelly's gift out of a catalog all by yourself." No one could spend more time looking at catalogs than Sarah Jane. At least, that's what Timothy and Titus thought. But even they had to admit that Sarah Jane had picked out the perfect gift for Kelly, who was going away to college. It was a beautiful wooden book stand for holding a book open so you could study better. Kelly loved books. She was going to be either a teacher or a librarian. Sarah Jane gave an exasperated sigh. "I didn't say this thing I wanted to show you is what we're going to get Kelly. I said this thing is what I wish we could get for her, if we hadn't already gotten her what we got her." Titus looked at Timothy. "Are you following any of this?" Timothy groaned and shook his head. Then he said to Sarah Jane, "What's wrong with what we already got her?" Sarah Jane stared at the boys in alarm. "Nothing. I love what we got her. Why, don't you?" Timothy and Titus knew when they were licked, so they quit arguing and let Sarah Jane drag them over to the store window. And they had to admit that what Sarah Jane wanted to show them was worth seeing. "Excellent," declared Titus. "Neato," agreed Timothy. Chapter 2, The Silver Locket. They were looking at a beautiful silver locket that was almost 100 years old. It was decorated with flowers around the edge, and right in the center there was a sweet little bird. "It's a nightingale," said Sarah Jane proudly. "Read the card beside it." The card said that the nightingale was an early Christian symbol for joy. Mr. Robinson had explained it to Sarah Jane, and now she explained it to Timothy and Titus. Most birds went to sleep at nightfall, but the nightingale woke up in the early evening and sang through the night. The song of the nightingale was so sweet and happy sounding that it made people feel joyful and full of hope just to hear it. This was true even when times were bad, and times were very bad for the early Christians. They were punished and even killed for believing in Jesus. They had to hide in underground cemetery tunnels. But even then, they felt joy. They knew that no matter how bad things were, God was in charge, and that gave them hope. To show how hopeful they felt, they drew pictures on the walls. They drew pictures of flowers and birds. Nightingales. Sarah Jane said, "So ever since that time, almost 2,000 years ago, the nightingale has been a Christian sign of joy." Chapter 3, The Best Babysitter. Timothy said, "We have some cardinals in our backyard, but I don't think I've ever seen a nightingale." "Or heard one either," agreed Titus. "We have a lot of birds in the city, but mostly they're sparrows and pigeons." Sarah Jane shook her head. "That's because there are no nightingales in America. Mr. Robinson told me." She sounded so sad that the boys wanted to cheer her up. "Well, at least you can see a picture of a nightingale on the locket," said Titus. "Yes," said Timothy. "I'm glad you showed us the locket, S.J. It would have been a great thing to get for Kelly. That is, if we hadn't already gotten her what we got her." "Which is also great," added Titus. Sarah Jane smiled. It was nice of her cousin to say so, but she wasn't sad because there were no nightingales nearby, although that was kind of sad when you stop to think about it. No, Sarah Jane was sad because Kelly was going away. Kelly Donovan had been Sarah Jane's babysitter ever since Sarah Jane could remember. When the boys came to visit, which was often, Kelly had been their babysitter too. As babysitters went, Kelly was pretty strict, but she was never mean, and you always had the feeling she knew what she was doing. But best of all, Kelly always read to the cousins, even after they had learned to read for themselves. You never got too old to like hearing stories read aloud. The cousins especially liked mystery stories. They had a detective club, and they had even solved quite a few real mysteries themselves. Kelly used to take Sarah Jane, Titus, and Timothy to the library. In fact, she had been with them when Sarah Jane got her first library card years ago. And now, Kelly was leaving. She wouldn't even be here for the summer. She was going away to attend special classes right after graduation. Yes, things were changing, and Sarah Jane didn't know how a person was supposed to feel joyful with all that going on. Chapter 4, Seniors. Kelly was just coming out of the library as the cousins hurried up. "I hope we're not late," said Sarah Jane. "Nope, right on time," said Kelly with a smile. "This is fun having you guys come along." The cousins chatted with Kelly all the way to the high school, but when they got there, they didn't say much. They were too busy looking around at the wide hallways and rows of lockers. It seemed impossible to believe that they would ever go to a school that big, or ever be as big as the seniors they saw all around them. Kelly's friends were very nice to them, but Kelly was the nicest one of all. She even let them try on her cap. It was called a mortarboard. "The tassel goes on the right-hand side of your face," Kelly explained. "Then after you get your diploma, you move it to the left-hand side." They each practiced a few times. Sarah Jane liked the mortarboard so much she hated to give it back, but she knew no one would believe she was a senior, no matter which side the tassel was on. Of course, Kelly was a senior, and she was even more excited about the cap and gown than Sarah Jane, if that was possible. She wanted to stop by her father's office to show him, so the cousins went along. Mr. Donovan came out to the reception area to greet them. He looked so proud of Kelly. Sarah Jane thought he was going to burst. Even Dorothy, the stern-looking office manager, smiled. The cousins hung back by the door, feeling a little shy. Then something strange happened. Chapter 5, Something Strange. A young woman came out of a back room and sat down at her desk. She glanced over at Kelly, Mr. Donovan, and Dorothy with a polite smile. Then she saw the cousins. Instantly, her expression changed. Her eyes opened wide and her mouth dropped open. Sarah Jane didn't know when she'd ever seen anyone look so surprised. But there was something else. It took Sarah Jane a moment to figure it out. It was a look of pure joy. The young woman looked back at Kelly as if she was seeing an angel. Kelly and her father were so busy talking they didn't notice. But when Dorothy turned around, the young woman turned bright pink. She snatched up some papers and turned away to the filing cabinets. Sarah Jane looked quickly at Timothy and Titus. She could tell by the way they looked back at her that they had noticed something too. "What was all that about?" muttered Timothy. They stepped outside so they could talk better. They weren't sure why they didn't want to be overheard. It was just a feeling they had that something mysterious was going on. Sarah Jane said, "I don't get it. Why was that lady so surprised to see Kelly? She works for Kelly's dad. Kelly stops by the office a lot. They must have seen each other lots of times before." Timothy added, "And if she was so glad to see Kelly, why didn't she say something to her? Why did she just turn away like that?" "But it wasn't just Kelly," said Titus. "It was us. I'm sure the lady recognized us." "But how could she?" asked Sarah Jane. we've never seen her before in our lives. And that's where we'll stop. So join me next time for part 2 of The Mystery of the Nightingale in the Reading Corner with Mrs. G.